All right, welcome back to another episode of the Pinpoint Investor with Faisal Morsi. I'm excited and honored for today's guest, Bob Brandell. Bob has been a de facto mentor of mine, whether he's like to admit it or not. I've known Bob for probably about 6 or 7 years now since I've started in this business, and I appreciate you being on, Bob.
No problem. I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to get before the folks. God knows this is a humble type of institution that we throttle through every day with regards to real estate, and that of which we put in our own efforts, just in yours in a multiplier fashion by that of what we get out of it. So it's the old coming to work and enjoying it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I ask you about yourself, I have a story for everyone. And so when I was first, I think around the age of 30, I was a data analyst. I was working essentially what was my dream job at the time. And after about 2 years, I realized I didn't want to do it the rest of my career. And so I started looking at different means of entrepreneurship. I just knew in the back of my mind I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I heard about this distant relative of my wife who was a real estate investor. And I kept hearing stories about him. And I knew, one day I wanted to meet him. So I got his phone number and I reached out to him. And we ended up having dinner at a restaurant. And I didn't go in there with like any intentions or like even knowing what to get. I just wanted to like pick his brain. And so um, he was, extremely gracious with his time, and I appreciate it. And when I left that dinner, I knew that um, I was in the right path, I guess, as far as like what I wanted to do, and it invigorated me to become a real estate investor. And so when I got my first place, which I got it under contract, it was 2018. Bob was the first person that I reached out to, and he was gracious enough to lend to someone without any experience. And I remember walking into the settlement and thinking that I was, some big shot because I had a $5,000 tax return. And so when I got to the settlement table, title company was like, "Oh, it's $9,000 in closing costs." And I remember just like pausing. I was just like, well, I don't have $9,000." And they were like, "Well, how much do you have?" And I had $5,000. So Bob was nice enough to, tell me, he's like, "Well, I've never done this before." And we took the first draw at the settlement table. And then from there, I was off to the races. So it's kind of the story about how I started. And, I wouldn't be where I am without you and, funding all my deals up until now. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, and that's the truth. You can do real estate, or you can do it vicariously through others. But sometimes knowing the genuineness of folks and just where they're going and what might be a slippery slope that they're on, give them some footing, and it'll come back as a resource to you time and time again. So that was an easy one.
It's funny you say it's an easy one, but I feel like the red flags and the alarms would have been going off like right off the bat there. What was it that you're like, all right, like this guy's like worth the risk? Like,
Well, probably that there have been so much put into the transaction, which cause transactions to fail through just that of the weight of themselves. That by the time you get to that table, you know that the client has worked as hard and as long as shoulder to shoulder with that of the service providers, to such an extent that you know that they're not bailing for any reason. They're not scared because it's gone up another $4,000, because they see that of the ultimate success that the transaction will bring. Now, I'm not saying everybody who comes to a closing table is to be trusted or further than you can throw them type of thing. But we check for weapons, and if they come in and they're not here to harm, but here to do good type of thing. It's what brings everything together and gets the transaction through the success stage.
nice. I appreciate that. All right, so give me a background about yourself. Are your parents real estate investors? Did you come up with a silver spoon? Like, what's your upbringing?
Yeah, that's what you got me. I grew up in in Highlandtown when Highlandtown was Highlandtown. Back in the early days, I grew up living on Eastern Avenue, Luzerne Avenue, just areas right around there type of thing. So I am a Highlandtown boy, that's for sure. Started first job was that of a janitor right out of college in a steel mill. So they paid twice as much as that of the bank that I was working for part-time during college to be a branch manager. So being a branch manager paid one half of that of what the janitor paid under union scale. So after that, I determined that maybe that wasn't my dream job, as you so eloquently put it before with regards to yours. So I hopped out of there after 5 years, certainly, and decided making steel maybe wasn't it. I went over to that of Lockheed Martin. I was fortunate enough to be picked up by them. They were growing by that time. I recognized there was an opportunity there. They embraced me in a number of different ways with regards to that of opportunity and the ability to move up in a position. They also sent me to law school during the evenings, so it certainly finished up and took up all my time type of thing. But it gave me that of the foundation that I needed where I could travel further and move myself down the road with regards to a career. But the most important thing was that of the intervention of what's known as Cindy Brandell, my wife. She gave me exposure, first of all, to real estate because she had been in the business already probably 10 years when we first met. She had a diverse background with regards to it, knew the depth and the detail and what she really needed, as well as the patience and perseverance. When Martin's was laying off, unfortunately, when they lose a customer, they lose about 1,000 workers at a time. So we had to kind of hang in there. And Cindy was working for someone else in a title company. And I always suggested that she should go and begin her own. She invited me into it. I had no idea about real estate law. And based upon the premise of, I'm sure we can do this, just watch us. And the fearlessness brought us forward, and that's where we ended up. Having the opportunity of Stonegate title for 17 years, and literally just thousands of closings through that of good people. So I'm sure watching here, who trusted us with regards to their funds, their wherewithal, and that of the scrutiny of the title to make sure that they were successful in that of their investments. And that was all done in one sentence.
When you were first starting off Stonegate, what gave you the confidence to know that it would succeed?
That's an embarrassing question. I think it was from myself, it was that of the knowledge base my wife had, as well as just that of the sheer belief that at that age you're invincible and you can manage everything. Little did I know when I got into the business, I thought it was a very structured type of business. When I did aerospace, everything was very, very straightforward, very cut and dried. There were no allowances, no exceptions, no tolerances. I thought that's the way it was, certainly with regards to people's real property, their principal residences, their investment properties. But I quickly found out that it's very vague. At very least, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess it's very skeptical with regards to the depth of ownership and chain of title. The more you look at it, the scarier it gets. It's kind of like when they watch him make sausage and who eats the sausage type of thing too. Would you get into it? Would you do it? Would you have the belief and the strength in real estate once you knew everything you needed to know about it? Well, I think there's a tipping point between that of I don't know much, I'm trusting the people who I'm using as my service providers, or the other side of I know it all, I know who my people are, and notwithstanding that, I look over everything and understand it and don't allow anyone to move forward without my okay. So that of the depth of experience, knowledge, and just overall magnitude of just what you need for those tools to be successful in real estate long term. I can't tell you how many investors I've seen come in for a year or two, come in, buy a property, not know what they're doing, apply all the things the seminar they went to told them to do, found out that didn't work and fell off the face of the earth, hurting themselves because they spent all their last dime on real estate. But all that did was leave that property to be available for a next investor to come scoop it up and do better with it as that of a investment property.
Funny, in my short period of being in this industry, I've seen a lot of people come and go as well. So with Stonegate, did you got laid off from Martin's and you started Stonegate? Is that how that worked?
Cindy had already started Stonegate with another attorney.
Wow, okay.
So I actually came in because he was had difficulty with regards to financials. He needed to be financially successful right away, and title companies have a tendency of making a little bit of money on a lot of deals. So it's a volume oriented type of thing. And if you're doing 30 deals a month, that may be great. But when your competitors are doing 1,000 a year, you've got to know just what your volume is and just how you can attract business legally. Because at that time, also, people were going to jail because I saw a lot of things that were happening when I came out of the aerospace industry and into the real estate. And watching people do things that I thought certainly was way outside the lines. And I remember commenting to folks, wow, this is really great. I saw that of fraud. I saw misrepresentations, that people asking me, hey, Bob, can I do this? And I said, well, I can't give you the right to do it, certainly, but you're telling me about other people who have and have trained you how to do this. Well, it also trained them how to go to jail. So that was my first orientation, the first 3 years, I would say, of the industry, one which was probably the most unruly and illegal activities I'd ever seen in the real estate industry. Thankfully, I was smart enough to know just back away from it, let these people go past, and the waters will calm, and the true entrepreneurs will rise up as service providers.
So, was that your first business that you had started or been a part of?
Well, I would say, I can't say it's my business. I have to say it's my wife's business because certainly she started it with the other attorney. But I was fortunate enough for them to invite me in. My first business, though, was that of putting up directional signs for that of new home builders while I was working at the aerospace plant. So these little cardboard gems that go out on weekends to put up 2,000 to 4,000 a weekend based upon just that of volume and employing people who needed a part-time job to backfill with their full-time job, that they weren't sure that they had enough money saved until the next big wave of layoffs came about. So when they asked what's that in the back of my truck, and I said just directional signs, little did they know that I had actually hired and came to being that of my business partner was that of my supervisor at the industry as well over there at the aerospace plant. So eventually we ended up with about 30 some people who worked at Martin's, but also were engaged with that of the sign. So it was a beautiful thing because everybody worked together. Everybody came together 5 days a week and then scattered on the weekends to go tell everybody where to find the directionals to that of new home construction. So it was an anomaly that's unlike it at all. I joke around and say it's funny because technically the signs went up in that of the state highway road thoroughfares. And because of that, they were installed illegally. But yet, of course, when it came time to claim that of the income on our taxes, we, of course, had to pay tax on the illegal activity. So that's one that I recognize, even when you're trying to do well, the government's there with regards to helping with regard, keep you honest with regards to tax payments on an illegal activity. And we only graded, I guess, broke the law 2,000 to 4,000 times a weekend by putting each sign in being a misdemeanor.
Yeah, it's funny because you and I were talking about this recently, and when I asked you what your greatest joy from like entrepreneurship was, it was basically feeding all of like your coworkers and like giving them extra income. So I thought that was telling of who you are as a person and a business owner. What has been like your greatest lesson so far from out of those businesses or your journey as a real estate investor?
That's the easiest question people ask me all the time. And that is the answer is simple. Choose very good business partners and get out of the way. If you've got people who know what they're doing and you don't want to be that of the, hey, can you show me how to do that type? Or I've got a better idea, but rather those that you have the faith to declare as a partner. Now you have the faith to step on the side and allow them to do what they do best associated with growing the business and scaling. And it worked. It worked well, both for male and female business partners that I've had in the past, including that of my wife. I restate once again.
I know Cindy very well. She's definitely a great entrepreneur. And you guys make a great team.
That's
Now, as
because
far as like you,
they're opposite ends of the building.
now what are you currently doing as like a real estate investor and like where do you see your I guess, career going? I mean, most of the time I ask that question, it's people who are younger, but sure, where do you see your career going?
Right. And I've always been a wanderer. As one door is closed, another one is open. Certainly, I've been fairly fortunate with regards to that. So it's taking that of the skills and applying them. At my age, 65 now, my wife and I have the ability to choose and be more selective as to that of our client base. When you start up, of course, a business when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're taking everything that comes through the door. Now, of course, we can help those we feel sincere, build those who we need to, and shed the rest of them that we don't feel fit that of our model anymore because of that of how we want to see real estate transactions be affected appropriately, collectively, and in the right purpose to assist that of the client base.
Now, kind of segues into the next question. So, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting off their real estate investing journey?
Don't do it.
All right. Well, if they're dumb enough and crazy enough to do it, what advice would you give them so they can be successful?
It's funny because it's the practicality. I can't tell you how many first time investors I have worked with. And, when I sat with Martins, there were literally hundreds of people who sat in cube farms just wishing that they could get out there and be their own entrepreneur, their own boss, their own best and final kind of person who leads them through that of the way to financial success. But I find that, until you can do all the books, all the tapes, all the reading, all the podcasts and the like, and all the advice, but it only percolates to that of do your first deal. I can't tell you how many people I've said, how'd you do on your first deal? And they look at me and they said, wow, I lost $5,000. I said, how much did you put into it? And they would look at the numbers, we reconcile it and recognize that that was the best learning experience they ever had. If they stuck with it from the first one, they were going to be exponentially better for the second, the third, and the fourth. And sure enough, I mean, I've seen literally first-time home buyers, when you were able to do this for first-time home investors, purchase properties with that of credit cards. They were buying the properties by the pound in some unwanted areas of the town. They'd bring in, $4,000 or $5,000 of credit somehow, and we'd be able to allow them to purchase that of the real property, at which they somehow be able to then improve it, organize it, put a tenant in it, and make it a success story that they would replicate once again, only getting smarter and smarter and staying back further and further from harm's way that only real estate can provide. It's so interactive and so, well, the good, the bad, and the evil all congregate together in real estate.
It's like you were telling my story over again. Now, as far as like real estate investing goes, like if you were to start over from scratch, what would you do differently?
Well, the sincerity of real estate is, I think that during my first 10 or 15 years in the industry, I dealt with folks who were buying a lot of scattered lot townhouses. And they spoke of and dreamed of buying one day multis or buying one day that of commercial properties. But that was for the big dogs. They knew they could do it. They had the equity to do it, but they stayed on the porch. Certainly I would encourage that of the new guys to not be afraid of that, of what seems to be something that could be harmful. Actually, it may be the best thing that could happen to you associated with it. Find yourself a niche associated with that of a marketplace, whether it is a practice that you do, an area of town that you specialize in, but become that expert, because then you're the go-to guy. Then you're, hey, I know a guy type of thing. And it may look like something, by way of example, I can remember when I would run ads when they still had print media that said, I buy worthless land. It was funny how the phone would ring associated with that. Yet the folks felt that they had worthless land only because they didn't know how to cultivate it, type of thing. So it was a matter of just helping folks what they do have and sitting on it and not being able to create any manifestation of value for it to allow them to unload it on you, only to find that you've now got the asset that they should have been able to bring forward and cultivate into something that was a success story, and probably one of the best investments they should have made in their investing career.
That's smart. One thing that I think I've probably the most valuable thing that I got from you, as from your mentorship or even like your guidance, is to always lead with value. And whether I have the information or whether I have to find the information for someone, I always feel like planting those seeds and even connecting people with someone who knows the information or could help them out has been like the greatest aspect of my career that's gotten me this far. What would you say has gotten you the furthest in your career?
I'd have to say that of the appreciation of that's a tough one. Because I hold licenses, of course, as an attorney, as a title person, certainly as a real estate broker and the like. And I have ability, technically, at least what's granted by that of the state, to be able to perform and act on these types of transactions. So it's more the ability to be able to see the other side of the fence, normally, which it takes 2 or 3 people to have distinct careers to be able to come together and discuss something. But when you have all 3 of these skill sets, if you will, vested by that of the licenses themselves, you can opine on certain conditions, find certain things that can help out and help one party to simply bring about that of the success of the transaction by removing all the challenges that title of a real estate transaction may have. I've said oftentimes that, I've seen people literally just buy into things that they felt were of limited value. And yet when they took them to the other service providers, if they had a good team, those guys would make them the richest of anybody on the team. So being a service provider was number 2. Being that investor who had the great team was where you wanted to be.
Do you have any advice for someone who is trying to build their team? Like what should people look out for when it comes to different service providers?
Right. And that is, find the ones who are patient, find the ones who will take your call. I used to have law partners who would say, why do you always pick up the phone, Bob? Because I'm giving away free advice. And I said, it's because I want to give away the free advice, because when it comes time to paying for the advice, those are the people that would have grown up in the industry with and will recommend me and recognize me, certainly. So that's the easiest of all.
Yeah, I've definitely given your number out hundreds of times, that's for sure. All right, and so you've employed hundreds of people, been part of probably thousands of transactions. What's been your craziest real estate story or experience so far?
Well, I believe that we've had some discussions previously that you grew up in Howard County.
Carroll County.
Carroll, oh, so much for my story.
Yeah. It's
Well,
right on the border though.
that's right. Yeah. Well, we'll pretend like you grew up in Howard County. I remember one time I had a relationship with a builder in Howard County, and he knew me for putting up his signs. So people were quite surprised when they found out that I was actually an attorney, and I did real estate closings as well. Most of them were taken aback because they felt they were either paying too much for the sign guy to do their title or paying too little to that of the title guy. He must know what he's doing since he's got to have a part-time job smacking signs in the ground on the weekends. But in any case, I had been awarded that opportunity to close on a subdivision of about 130 pieces of land, subdivided land in Howard County. And we all came together because at that time, wet settlements actually took place where everybody had to be in the room. Everybody signed with wet settlements with blue ink, and everybody was genuine and original. We weren't dealing with DocuSign, those types of reliable third-party instruments. But in any case, we came together and we came in this room, and I remember it was an unusually large round table, and you generally don't have round tables in that of settlements. They're more boat shaped or that of rectangular shape, just so that it's easier to reach the parties when you need to pair off with regards to documents. But in any case, we're sitting in there, and we knew that the closing was going to take literally several hours. Most of the people who sat around the table were the bank, the attorney for the bank, myself as the attorney for the title company, the real estate agents. One of the brokers also showed up, and just a myriad of people. So as we continued down, I was sitting next to a woman who was very unassumingly dressed. She was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. And she was there being shepherded through by that of her husband and that of the real estate agent. And I can remember that I asked her as I turned to her, because we had a break, I said, what position was she part of this? And she says, oh, I'm one of the sellers. So what had taken place was that there was a team of two gentlemen who used to go around doing major subdivisions with other people's land. They would simply contract with people like Mrs. Smith, we'll call her, ask Mrs. Smith just to keep doing what they were doing, which was just running their farm, then go over to the county, create a subdivision effort, which would take 18 to 24 months to get all the permissions and all the data together. And then on the day of settlement, they would record that. So instead of one big piece of land, you'd have 130 parcels of land, certainly instrumentally much more valuable as the broken up parcels of land. So I turned to her and I said, okay, this looks good. I said, well, what are you going to do today, first thing when you go out from here? Because she had, through that of the people she had dealt with in the transaction, actually owned the land with what's known as DEOs, or density options. And what that means is simply that allowing, not only did she have the ability to own the land, but there were certain rights as far as how many houses you could build on that land. So it might be one house for every 10 acres and the like. As I recall, she was qualified for that of and was selling that day well over 20 of these DEOs, density exchange options. That's the word I was looking for. And they were being sold at the table for $50,000 a piece. Now I'm thinking, here's something which the woman's not selling the land. She's simply selling that of a right, of the bundle of rights that the land had always been there. So if you take 50,000 times 20 of these, that's $1 million. So she was certainly humbled by that of the amount of money she was about to receive. And I looked at her and I said, while we were on a break, I said, so tell me, what are you going to do with all this money? And she says, oh, I'm giving it to my kids. I said, okay. I said, how old are they? And she says, oh, they're like 2 and 4. She says, may I show you a picture? And certainly, so she pulls out of her purse, not a designer purse. This was certainly something more, it looked like it was, you may feed the chickens with, I have to admit. But anyway, she dug in the wallet, dug through that up and finally found the pictures and literally showed me pictures of her goats. Goats, that's correct. So that was her kids. I didn't realize it, but at the end of the day, she took her kids, she took her $1 million check, and she went back to her farm and just lived happily ever after. And I thought, I'm definitely in the wrong business on this one. So remember, guys, spell it out, because most counties do have this DEOs, or density exchange options. If you can find them, you can buy them, you can approve them, you can apply them. You'll simply move the right to be able to build in one area of the county to the other area of the county, which may increase the value of the land tremendously. But it's all in having the knowledge base of just what the county will do and what you can do through that of hard work and application of real estate.
And I think that's been the most valuable piece of advice from any guest that I've received so far. All right, so you definitely got my mind spinning with that. We're probably going to hop on a call after this. So, how do people get a hold of you?
It's simple. I'll take emails, and certainly I actually still use telephones too from time to time. So if you do want to call me and believe that it can be me on the line, 410-493-5566 is my cell. So of course you can text or call. And that of my email address is Robert, it's my name, Robert C. Brandell, Brendel, @gmail.com. So I'll
Awesome.
try to respond within 24 hours, if not sooner. Then if you got something that's exciting and important, I'll probably get to you real quick.
Fantastic. I appreciate your time, and obviously honored by everything that you've done for me, and I appreciate everything. My family appreciates it. So, thank you very much, and thank you for your time today, Bob.
Take care now.
You too. Talk soon.